On this week's interview, I'm very excited because I have Isabel Garza on this podcast. Welcome to Beauty Marks Podcast, Isabel.
Thanks for having me, Elizabeth.
So, I'm really excited to really dig deep into this topic about, hormones, how it goes with our, mental health, our body. There's so many aspects to this conversation. So, can you just dive into what you're first passionate about for those that never heard you before? And then we can go into PCOS and all of that.
Yeah, of course. Like Elizabeth said, my name is Isabel Garza. I am a registered dietitian and I specialize in the intersection of women's health and disordered eating. And I'm really just passionate about women feeling well in their bodies. And that is defined as physically, emotionally, and mentally. I so often see women so willing to sacrifice their mental and emotional health for physical outcomes or physical health or physical results. And I mean, I would argue that if you have to sacrifice your mental, emotional health for a physical outcome, is that even healthy? Right. And I think a lot of women feel that friction where they're striving to lose weight or wanting to improve their hormones, but feeling anxious, feeling overwhelmed, feeling guilt and shame around their food choices. And that doesn't feel good. That doesn't allow them to feel freedom in their health, in their bodies. And so, what I really do with women is advocate for them, allow them to speak up and have a voice and say, hey, this isn't working for me. If this is health, then this is not what I want to pursue. But to really give them that space to experience health holistically. So that's really what I do in a little kind of snippet is to
Mhm.
allow women to experience their health as a whole.
I love what you just said, because I feel that most of my life I have felt guilt when it comes to, or shame when it comes to weight loss and like the dynamic between me being healthy versus the feeling of being healthy. And it's never been kind of like, a happy feeling for me, or an emotional thing of, like I'm so proud of myself. I'm skinny now, but I still feel like I have body dysmorphia. I don't like how I look still. So it's like, will we ever be happy in that dynamic, So I like your work because you dig deeper into even when you're healthy, like what that looks like and how you really feel at the same time. Like it should definitely be a better feeling. I share on my podcast about my even journey with, not eating. So like when I'm very stressed, I don't eat. And so that's been my journey through therapy and counseling and just dealing with it. And then, with my hormones, I have a lot of estrogen in my body. And so they've looked into what causes me to lose weight, gain weight. And so it's been frustrating, I'm not gonna lie. So on this podcast, I've talked about that before, but where does your passion come from? Is it because you dealt with weight loss, weight gain, your hormone changes? Like, where does your story start?
Yeah. So I was also diagnosed with a hormone dysfunction called PCOS. And for listeners who don't know what PCOS stands for, polycystic ovarian syndrome. And it's diagnosed through three criteria: irregular periods. So if you have spread out periods, they're not coming every month. High androgens, so that can either be through blood tests, they see high male sex hormones, or you have features of high androgens, so body hair, facial hair, things like that. And then the last criteria is the appearance of polycystic ovaries through ultrasound. So as long as you meet 2 out of 3 of those criteria, you can have an official diagnosis of PCOS. But PCOS is much more than just those diagnoses. It really comes with a lot of emotional and mental dysregulation. So women with PCOS very often have higher anxiety, mood swings, are more prone to depression, and all these other symptoms like more tendency to experience disordered eating and eating disorders, binge-like tendencies. And I really experienced that whole spectrum. But because PCOS isn't very well known and there isn't a lot of clear education around PCOS, a lot of women leave, their doctor's visit with that diagnosis empty-handed, saying,
Mm.
okay, great, I have this label, but now what? And again, that's really what I experienced. And in the midst of that, I was experiencing a lot of my disordered eating behavior as well. I was obsessively exercising, I was eating really little. And at that time, I didn't realize how those behaviors were directly impacting my hormones. And so I was fighting a lot of my cravings and urges. And I just feel like I felt like I couldn't get my feet underneath me. And eventually, as I became more educated in the world of hormones, as well as in the world of disordered eating, putting those two pieces together was such a game changer for my personal experience with a chronic illness.
Mm.
Just realizing that disordered eating doesn't happen in a silo and hormone dysfunction doesn't happen in a silo, but that they interact together, right? So, kind of how we started our conversation, our mental, emotional, and physical health are constantly interacting underneath the surface. That really gave me the sense of, okay, we have to take care of the body as a whole body and not just in this silo, right? So just eat this, don't eat that for your health, and then maybe go to counseling for your mental health, right? Those all actually interact so deeply. So when I started taking better care of my mental health, I was able to take care of my body better. And when I was taking care of my body better and I was better nourished, I wasn't depleted, then also my mental and emotional health improved. And so I bring that approach to the table with the women I work with, that, hey, these things are all connected and you can take care of yourself in that way without feeling like, okay, now I have to take care of my physical health and then it's a bit
Yeah.
of a game of whack-a-mole, right? Then something else comes up. When we really treat the root cause of what is causing these symptoms that you are experiencing, then very often many of those symptoms can go away because we're no longer, engaging in band-aid solutions. We're really taking care of you and your own unique needs.
Yeah, like the real issue, like the real
Yeah.
underlying issues. How
Mm-hmm.
would you say that you found a correlation between, because we talk about, a lot of people focus on weight and their diet culture, and I'm sure that you are, you have your thoughts on that. So how does that work with really combining them and kind of being aware of them for yourself? So like knowing, okay, so my mental health, my physical health, and my spiritual, or just me holistically, how can I be more aware of that?
Yeah. Um, I call that your internal wisdom, because I think there's a lot of external wisdom, right? There's a lot of nutrition interventions when it comes to how to heal your hormones, how to deal with high estrogen levels, right? How to support ovulation, all of those things, which I love. I am such a nerd when it comes to that type of stuff. But at the same time, your body is going to tell you something that is very clear and maybe a little bit more gentle, right? It's not this very black and white understanding. So I realize, I'll just speak from personal experience. I realized that when I wasn't cycling regularly, or when I was not eating well or engaging in high intensity exercise, and my hair was falling out, I was feeling more moody, I would snap, and it would like happen and I would be like, what was that, right? It almost feels like
Mm-hmm.
this out of body experience. That was something I needed to tune into. And it really depends on where you are in the healing journey. Again, I think, I really harp on this. There's a lot of noise out there, but not all of that noise is going to be relevant to where you are. So for me, before I even addressed any type of hormone dysfunction, I had to make sure I was just eating enough and not exercising too much, right? Yeah, we can talk about specific fruits and vegetables and nutrients that my body needed, but I was barely able to even engage in that because I was so dysregulated and I had all these cravings that were through the roof. And so I think it really depends on the person. Not everyone's story is going to be like mine, but I think it's important to understand, where am I in my health journey? What do I need right now? What is my lowest hanging fruit? And for you, it may be to heal your relationship with food so that you can get some bearings and
Mhm.
start really thinking about nutrition in a healthy way versus in a black and white way or restrictive way. For others, maybe they are able to engage in some therapeutic approaches to nutrition, and that therapeutic approach to food can help stabilize their mental and emotional health. And then they can continue to heal their relationship with food. And oftentimes those things, come hand in hand and maybe happening together. But I think it's really about listening to that quiet voice inside you that's directing you and guiding you and telling you, hey, I don't think this is working for us. Maybe we should do XYZ. So I know that, isn't a list of to dos, hey, do one, two, three to heal and feel better. I think it really is about this partnership with your body and knowing where your body is. We can't not know anything about our body and try to heal it, right? That wouldn't make any
Mhm.
sense. There'd be a disassociation there.
Yeah, that's so good because I think when I think about like what my body is telling me sometimes, it's like when you're either having a headache or you're hungry or you kind of feel the anxiety building. Like our body speaks to us in those
Mhm.
subtle ways that we maybe don't correlate to like, oh, like maybe I need to eat or maybe I'm very stressed. Like we have to learn how that works. In the interview that you did with Dr. Anita, like I really was intrigued to like really she talks a lot about emotions and putting a name to an emotion and then understanding what we're feeling. And so I feel like with what you speak about, it's really like understanding like, okay, what am I really feeling right now, like being more aware and in touch with our body, which most of the time I feel like we're just go go go, that until we really have something happen to us in our health, then we're like, oh, or like we go to a doctor and we get a result of something, then we become a little bit more aware. So I like how you say just really dig deeper into ourselves and like listen to our body and what it needs, because it could be very different than someone else. I hear you talk about disordered eating, and I really want to go into that because we hear about eating disorders. And what is disordered eating? What's the difference so that people understand that?
Mhm. Yeah, eating disorders is a official diagnosis based on a DSM-5. So there are specific criteria to meet in order to be diagnosed with an eating disorders. Disordered eating is a little bit more of a spectrum of abnormal eating behaviors. So maybe it looks like engaging in binge eating behavior, extreme restriction, purging, maybe some weight fluctuations, but not to the level of what is outlined in the DSM-5. Now, that being said, I think in our culture these days, there's
Hmm.
so much dieting, there's so much health and wellness, and I say that in quotes,
Hmm.
that a lot of disordered eating behavior is glamorized and
Hmm.
overlooked or even glorified, that we are really missing the mark on seeing these behaviors as what they are, which is harmful towards our mental, emotional, and physical health. So I think sometimes people think, okay, I have this distress around food, but I don't have an eating disorder. I don't act like that or look like that. But because of the culture we live in, I think it is more and more abundant and prevalent. And so many women are affected by it. So, for any of your listeners who may be experiencing some disordered behavior on that spectrum, I would say, you don't have to have a diagnosis of an eating disorder in order to be struggling with food. If you feel like your behaviors are disruptive towards your mental and emotional health, your social health, your relational health, it's just disruptive towards how you want your life to look and how you want to be living your life, then you can reach out for help and seek support to find healing. There isn't a threshold that you need to meet in order
Hmm.
to officially reach out for help or seek support in this area. Again, because it's so prevalent, I think people just normalize those behaviors, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Mhm. I hear that more common, even in friend groups, people that I've been around that talk about, that they're either obsessed with either working out, that like they are like picking out their body and like every little, thing about their body. There's also friends that don't eat, that they eat once a day, but it's not even that they're like they think it's not starving themselves, it's just that they don't, like, they just don't either get hungry, or
Mhm.
other people that like at night they binge eat because they're going through something like emotional eating.
Mhm.
And so that is something more common, like how you said, that I've heard more of than people saying I'm diagnosed as, having an eating disorder.
Mhm.
um you say that is probably more prevalent now. Do you feel, what are the factors, would you say, that have made that more normal? Because
Mhm.
people talk about it so easily, like, oh yeah, I haven't ate today, like, or oh, I ate really bad last night, or I'm just going through it. So like we talk about it, I feel so much more normal, but it's like how you said, disordered eating. So what do you feel like has maybe triggered that to become more
Mhm.
relevant today?
Yeah. I would say social media is a huge component of that. In fact, they've done research that shows the increase in body dysmorphia and its challenges with body image due to the exposure of social media. And I think that's because, our parents and our parents' parents, they didn't see the body of a random girl in Europe, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
they weren't looking at tons and tons of different bodies within a minute. That's not possible, right? In a real life setting. Yet here we have social media. You can scroll and scroll and scroll and compare yourself, your body, your lifestyle, even what you eat, right? People posting what they eat.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much comparison. And like they say, comparison is the thief of joy in our lives, happiness, contentment, satisfaction. And so I think social media and the way that it presents, right, the highlight reel of people's lives, you can edit photos, you can take pictures at certain angles. Women
Mm-hmm.
have this extreme kind of dysregulated idea of what bodies all look like. So
Yeah.
I would say that. And then I would say just the growing health and wellness industry. I mean, there are billions and billions of dollars poured into the health and wellness industry in order to entice women. I mean, if you compare a inbox like my inbox compared to my husband's inbox, mine is all beauty products, right? Maybe weight loss protocols, all these ads that are telling me that how I look is not enough. And so if we don't realize that we are being targeted, we will easily fall into kind of that riptide of you need to change this, you need to change that, you are not good enough. And it becomes part of our subconscious that we don't even realize we're buying into a lie. So I would say
Mm-hmm.
that the messages around us are just so loud, and we really have to be intentional in protecting ourselves, protecting our health from that noise and what it can do to our overall health.
Yeah. That's so good that you said that, because all this podcast is, I reinforce that so much, that IG, Instagram is a highlight reel, and what you see, as great as it looks, it's not the reality, and especially with comparing ourselves, that starts from a young age, for a lot of people. And then now I can't even imagine the teenagers and, you know, children that like are constantly exposed to that. But it is being more aware of those things. When you talk about just knowing our body and like disordered eating, if someone feels like they have those tendencies, either to one extreme or the other, what are things that like can help? Because it's not, I feel like it's deeper than just the eating. We're talking about the how it ties with other things in our body, our hormones, our emotional health. So how can someone, what are some tips maybe that you have for people that are aware of that they do that?
Mhm. Yeah, I would say disordered eating behaviors very often come from this narrative that you should be doing something other than what you're doing, right? So there's this
Mhm.
constant kind of noise in the back of your head saying, oh, I should be eating less carbohydrates, or I should be on a diet, or I should be a certain number on the scale. And that should ends up disconnecting you from your body and what your body is telling you. So, for example, let's use the I should be a number on the scale. Okay, where does that come from and why? And also, what is it going to take for your body to get there? Right. And also, why is your body at the number on the scale that it is now? It's not just because of carbohydrates or calories or exercise. You are such a complex being, and your behaviors and how you think and how you feel and your hormones, right, all make up your body. And as an outcome, that number. But there's such a kind of focus and importance in that number that we end up ignoring all these other factors that are so important. So I would say, what are your shoulds? Maybe doing a little bit of an inventory on your shoulds and then turning back into your body, kind of echoing what we talked about earlier. So I like to use the analogy of like if you were on a desert island, right? There wasn't any social media, there's no scales, right? There's no diet book that tells you how and what to eat. How
Mhm.
would you navigate your health? And I think a big part of that would require us to tune in and say, well, what does my body feel? What do I crave? What satisfies me? What energizes me? What makes me feel good, sleep well, right? All these questions that only your body can tell you. And that number on scale can't tell you. And so I think, again, it's really being willing to say, hey, maybe there's something more to my body and what it can communicate to me than all these external shoulds. So, again, in summary, just taking that inventory. What are my shoulds? And then tuning into your body. Okay, if there was nothing to tell me what and how to eat, what would my body tell me? And then, of course, I would say getting support, because, sometimes our messages can be a little dysregulated if you've been dieting for a really long time, if you have hormone dysfunction. So some guidance on how to interpret some of those signals can be very beneficial. So if you're experiencing a lot of cravings, right, that very often can be a sign or a symptom of thyroid dysfunction, hormone dysfunction, high estrogen levels, like you
Mhm.
shared. And so, someone who specializes in that field can help you explore, okay, we can better understand where these cravings are coming from. And instead of restricting or trying to fight or white knuckle through, you can explore, okay, how can I better take care of myself when I experience these cravings and urges? So again, it's a very comprehensive approach that isn't as simple as a meal plan that someone slides across the table or is in some book, right? It's going to
Mhm.
be so curated to you.
Yeah. I've been on fad diets for over the years because after high school, I was super active in high school, worked out all the time, ate really healthy, lived a different lifestyle, and then college comes, you start gaining weight because of the stress. Like you don't ever think like, "Oh wow, why am I gaining weight?" It's like, "Okay, I have 5 classes, I have 2 jobs. I'm not able to eat like as like to cook my meals as I would like to." Like it's like your lifestyle has a lot to do that, but I would shame myself for that. I'm like, I should be working out, squeezing in a workout, sleeping 4 hours a day. Like we make all these like we should, like I should do these things. And I heard in one of your podcast episodes that you're like, we can't shame ourselves skinny. We can't um tell her like talk to ourselves in such a like an awful way and then be like, you need to fit in these jeans or you need to weigh this much. Like because it doesn't like it doesn't feel good. And it really stuck to me of what you said about that, because I feel like we really don't give ourselves grace, and really understand our body and what's going on, maybe some environmental changes, emotional things that happen in our life, trauma that happens, like all of those things can affect how we look on the outside, and what's happening. And I also heard this the other day that stuck with me, that it was like my body or my image is actually the least interesting thing about me. It's the least like what you look on the outside has nothing to say of what's on the inside of who I am. Um, but even with what you said, like social media, that's what they push to you. It's like it's the pretty pictures, the angles. Um, so I thought I'd share that.
Yeah, no, I so agree with that. And there is such a focus, right, on the outside, but it does tell very little, if anything, about
Mhm.
who we are. And, you talk about weight and weight changes, again, it's so easy to assume that weight gain is a bad thing, right? And that
Mhm.
is something wrong with our bodies and something that we need to fix. But I think, like your experience, very often weight gain is actually our body doing exactly what it's supposed to do, which is to protect you in times of stress, right? To slow you down. So oftentimes our body will fluctuate in its metabolism, change its hormones in order to be in more of a preservation mode in order to protect your body in those times of stress or even nutrient deficiencies. And so the body is doing something good. And so I say at a hormonal level, we can explore that and understand that and give our bodies compassion when it goes through that. But also in more casual senses, right? I think certain seasons, holiday seasons, sometimes we experience weight gain and there's so much pressure to keep losing weight or lose the weight after the holidays. But what are you doing around the holidays? You're enjoying food that is celebratory, time with maybe family or community or whatever that may be. And if part of that is food, but we just distill it into this number on the scale, I mean, we're really missing out on what our life is about. And so I think sometimes really stepping away from that number can give us a greater sense of what is important in our life, just like what you said, right? Like my body is the least important thing about me. I want to be known for the way I take care of others, the conversations that I have, the way that I love others, right? All of these things. And if we're constantly thinking about that number, or even constantly judging the food on our plate, how much of that space in our brain is being taken up by that, and therefore pushing out the space that we could be really engaging in what's important to us. So I so appreciate you saying that, because sometimes we do have to kind of shake it up a little bit and say, hey,
Mhm.
like, what is this all about again? What is important in our lives?
Yes. Yeah, you have to just refocus yourself. And I know this work takes time, and I know when you've thought a certain way, or if you're always doing fad diets, or if your hormones are unstable, and that's frustrating because you don't know what's going on with your body. There's a lot of things that take time, and I know that for yourself, what are maybe some tips that someone that is struggling, with maybe figuring out the flow of their body, and same with you when you got diagnosed with PCOS, I'm sure there was a lot of adjustments that you had to make to become healthy mentally, emotionally, and physically, because there's a lot of stuff going on. So, what are some tips that you have for people?
Mhm. Yeah, the first thing I would say is you have to assess your own health, right? Again, getting away from that comparison. So, whether that is meeting with a healthcare provider, meeting with a dietitian, getting some labs run, also just taking a realistic view on your relationship with food, right? What does my relationship with food look like? Is it healthy? So I think doing an assessment, both a medical assessment as well as a self assessment on where am I? Because unless we know where we are, we can't take that next step, right? To make progress and to grow. Then once we make that assessment, then we know what type of adjustments to make. So if you are struggling with disordered eating, maybe you know what is that next step, but you have some fears, right? Okay, but if I take this next step towards freedom, maybe I'm going to gain weight, or what if my friends don't approve of me, or what if people think less of me? Maybe there are some fears. So I think processing through some of those fears and working through those fears so the fears don't keep you where you are. But I would say that adjustment is so important, because I think so many women come to me wanting help, wanting to change their health, but aren't willing to let go of their diet rules or behaviors or lifestyles that they have been engaging in. And I get that, right? Because it's familiar, it's what you know. Even if it's not working for you, it's still scary to make that change. So I would encourage you to bring in a open mind when it comes to making changes to your nutrition, that it may not look like what you think or have read
Mm.
on the internet. It may not look like eating salads every day and smoothies every day, right? It's really going to depend on that initial assessment. So we assess it and then we adjust your nutrition. And then I would say to really advocate for yourself throughout that process. So, Elizabeth, I know you mentioned seeking counseling, right? Do you have that support, whether it is through a licensed therapist or through community? That emotional and mental support is so important. And I bring that into my sessions with women because, again, our health does not exist in silos. So maybe we make some adjustments, but then some of those fears come up, some of those challenges come up. Then we talk through, okay, how do we support that? How do we work through some of those fears? How do we kind of think through some of these thoughts in our heads and challenge them so that we can move forward and make progress? So that's kind of a bit of a summary of what the process can look like. But I would say it's really important to know where you are at. That is so important as a precedent before you leap into the next step to take. And I know what I'm sharing is pretty general, but that's because, one protocol isn't going to be suitable for every single person, even among hormone dysfunctions, PCOS, endometriosis, hypothyroidism, all are going to require different interventions.
Mhm. And would you suggest going to a certain, like a specialist when it comes to your hormones? Because I know people that have, high progesterone, or testosterone, different hormones that are irregulated. So who do you suggest going to seek when it
Mhm.
comes to those things?
Yeah, an endocrinologist is going to be your best friend when it comes
Mhm.
to getting the proper labs tested and really better understanding your hormones. I also recommend seeking a dietitian who specializes in hormone dysfunction. Just like doctors, right? They have
Mhm.
their own specialty, and same with dietitians. So, a
Mhm.
dietitian that specializes in oncology is going to be different than a dietitian that specializes in hormone dysfunction, is going to be different than a dietitian that specializes in, say, eating disorders. And so we
Mhm.
have to kind of find a dietitian that is a good match for you. So for me, I offer services that are specifically more in the functional medicine realm, where we talk more about food as medicine and offer a more therapeutic approach to food.
Mhm.
And I also offer services that are for women who are still struggling with disordered eating while experiencing hormone dysfunction, because that intervention is going to be different than for someone who is just wanting some guidance on nutrition. So again, the specializing is so key, to go to a specialist, not just your
Mhm.
general practitioner, or else they may not give you the labs or the answers that you're seeking, and then you are left feeling a little empty-handed.
Mhm. Yeah, I finally went to a nutritionist that specializes in hormones, and that has helped me. I did my blood work, went through that route. She, broke it down for me. It was probably the first time in my years that I felt like more clarity about my condition, or like what's going on with my body, than I ever have before, because I had seen so many different people that would tell me different things, like eat 6 times a day, or like maybe cut out this, and like it felt like I was going nowhere for a long time. And then now I feel a lot of clarity. So I definitely recommend the suggestions that you said, because it definitely gives you more peace of mind in your journey. So what's one piece of encouragement throughout this? We talked about weight, your hormones, how it ties with, your body, and just kind of even the image and the shame that we might feel if we're trying to lose weight, based on society and all these things. But what encouragement do you have when it comes to this topic for women that are struggling with, you know, all of this, um,
Yeah, I would say that you are valuable. I mean, I think in the process, it can be easy to get caught up in the fix it mentality, right? Okay, now I need to fix my relationship with food. I need to fix my hormones. But if those factors of your health are really defining your worth and your value, then that process is going to be so exhausting, right? Because you are putting all your eggs in that basket. So before any work that I experience with women, it's not really just about, okay, this is the protocol that we do. We really set a foundation on, okay, who are you? What is important to you? What do you value? And where do you place your value? Because that needs to be foundational, because the path to healing is not linear, right? And it can go up and it can go down. And if your sense of your value is also going up and down with every change in your health, gosh, you're going to feel whiplash from left to right, up and down. And it's going to really, really be depleting. So setting a strong foundation on, okay, who am I and what will not change no matter how the status of my health changes is so key. So I would say know your values, find your value in something outside of your health. I get it. You know, I was on a health journey for a really long time, and that kind of felt like all encompassing, right? That it was the books I read, it was the podcasts I was listening to, all my appointments were doctor visits, right? And it can feel like that is everything that defines you. But I really encourage women to explore other parts of themselves, even if your chronic illness feels like it's seeping into all the areas of your life. Can you engage in your life in ways that don't have anything to do with just improving your health or changing your weight or changing what you eat and drink? Because you are so much more than the food you put in your mouth and the number on the scale.
Beautifully said. Thank you for that. How can people connect with you and all that you're doing, all the education that you have and give to your clients?
Yeah. So I am on social media at Woman Wise Nutrition. You can also go to my website, womanwisenutrition.com. That's where you can read a little bit about me, my services, my mission, how I serve my clients, and kind of get to know me a little bit more there.
Well, thank you so much, Isabel. I know that you encouraged and really educated some people today. This topic is encompassing and very sometimes tricky to navigate. So I feel like this started a conversation for people to have with themselves and figure out, what the next step is for them. So thank you so much for being a part.
Thanks for having me. It was wonderful.